Okay, this week we're talking about perception. All right, what we're going to focus on here is interpersonal encounters and impressions. So, first thing we're going to talk about is attribution. Your textbook defines attribution as the process of attaching meaning to another's behavior. And basically, attributions take two forms. They're either internal or they're external. And internal attributions presume that a person does something because of who they are, their inner character, their personality, really who they are as a person. And the other is external attributions. And these, here we assume that a person does something because of outside influences on their behavior, things that are beyond their control and that are therefore unrelated to their personal qualities. Now, this leads directly to the fundamental attribution error. Fundamental because it's very common. People do this a lot. And it's a mistake made by assigning the cause of someone's behavior to his or her personality rather than to outside forces, right? Somebody cuts you off on the road and you attribute it to him or her being a bad driver, being a jerk, any number of things. Not the fact that maybe they dropped their iPod or that they were distracted or something. You know, we tend to blame it on their personality. That's basically the fundamental attribution error. And knowing that can be very helpful for us when we're engaging with other people. We can catch ourselves because we generally don't suffer from this when we're looking at ourselves. Okay, when we're thinking about ourselves, instead, there are two things going on. One's called the actor-observer effect, and that's attributing external factors to explain our own behavior. Right? So when something's going on in our world, we blame factors outside of it. We don't blame our own personality. We think of ourselves typically as good people. So when we do something, typically when we do something that's not positive, that's not viewed as good, we say, "Oh, well, that was because I was late because there's a lot of traffic." Not you left late, right? Not that you were not responsible with your time, right? We tend to find excuses for ourselves outside of who we are. On the other hand, if we do something good, we tend to employ the self-serving bias, which says, well, we did great because of who we are, right? And some people do this more than others, but typically people will do that, right? They'll blame their bad behaviors on external factors, and they'll take credit for things they do good on positive behaviors through who they are, their own personalities. Okay, now going back to the impressions we have of others, interpersonal impressions are basically the mental pictures of who people are and how we feel about them. Okay, and in developing these, there's a few things going on, or a few different approaches that human beings employ. One of those is called a Gestalt. You might have heard that word before. I believe it's a German psychologist who came up with this idea. And it's basically the general and global impression of people, either positive or negative, right? So it's the overall view we have of the person. Oh, they're a good person. Oh, they're a bad person. Typically, people operate that way, right? If you think about your own experiences in life, your own friends, you probably have people categorized as either good or bad. And thankfully, for us, Gestalts are more likely to be positive. And that means we're going to see people as being good people, right? People are inherently good in general. And this is known as the positivity bias. We tend to look at things in a positive light. Okay, now here's some other effects or impacts that our impressions and how we experience the world shapes how we view it. Primacy effect is one. Basically, the first information we learn about others is most important, right? You've heard the importance of a first impression. Well, this is what the primacy effect is talking about, straight up. Right? You meet somebody for the first time, they're dressed well, they speak eloquently, articulately, they know what they're talking about. We think of them as a really together person. And maybe they were just particularly together that day, and the rest of their life, they're not very together. They're not articulate, they don't dress well, whatever. Not that there's anything wrong with not dressing well or not being articulate, but those tend to not have as many positive associations. But throughout our relationship with that person, we're probably always going to remember them and know of them as somebody that's together, that's articulate, and all that, because of the first impression. And another thing that we do when we're thinking about others and our impressions of them, it's called the negativity effect. That just like the stuff that we learn about somebody in the first few minutes of meeting them is more important, similarly the things that we learn about them that are negative tend to gain more importance and emphasis in our understanding of who they are. Right? We don't, when we think about people in our lives, we often, scholars say, we often don't list all the qualities that they have that are good as much as we focus on those that are bad too. We just notice those more, which is interesting. We tend to, the positivity effect is we tend to see the good, see that most people are good, but at the same time, we also tend to highlight the negative. All right, these next two ideas I think are pretty cool, and I love the names of them, the halo effect and the horn effect. Basically, the textbook that we have offers a slightly different definition, right? Here we've got the idea that people, if we have a positive gestalt of somebody, we tend to view them positively, okay? And the textbook we use discusses that the halo effect is the tendency to form an overall positive impression of a person on the basis of one positive characteristic. Typically that characteristic is physical beauty, right? That's also known as the beauty is good effect, okay? That just because somebody is attractive, we assume all kinds of good things about them, right? I'm reminded of the section from Lord of the Rings where Aragorn is looks like a very dark and dangerous traveler, and the hobbits are scared of him, and they're scared of him because of the beauty is good effect, right? He doesn't look like he's good, so they think he's bad, and he has to convince them that he's good. Anyway, that's what I think of when I think of the halo effect. On the opposite side is the horn effect. If we have a negative interpretation of, or negative gestalt of others, we tend to interpret their behaviors negatively, right? So there's a person you know, a friend of yours who you don't like for one reason or another, and anything they do, boy, it's a bad thing, right? I remember I've got a friend, and sometimes he kind of pushes my buttons, and he's a good guy, but I just, I like to hang out with him in small doses, So he was over at a barbecue I was having, and he brought a bunch of corn to barbecue, which was really cool of him. He brought a bunch of corn. I love corn. Everyone loves corn. It was a summer barbecue. And because of the horn effect, I judged it as a negative thing, right? Because my interpretation was he's bringing all this corn. He's going to take up all the grill space. We're not going to have any room on the grill to barbecue the chicken. What a clueless guy. How selfish. He wants to show off that he's sharing corn. I mean, totally ridiculous. So that was an example of me employing the horn effect. Luckily, one of my best friends pointed out, Pablo, he just can't do anything right around you, huh? And I said, oh, I guess you're right. So the horn effect is pretty strong. Some other ways that influence how we perceive others, in addition to the gestalt, is what's called algebraic impressions. And that's kind of a silly name for basically how we evaluate people and say, oh, that was something good they did, that was something bad they did. And we basically keep like a tally of things they do that are good, things that they do that we view as bad. Okay? Unlike gestalts, which pretty much stay the same, like this person is good, this person is bad, these algebraic impressions, as they're called, they're flexible, right? And they're therefore more accurate. We can modify them as information changes. And finally, another influence on perception, and a huge one, right, is stereotyping, right? And that's where we categorize people into social groups and evaluate them based on information about that group, right? Oh, you're a skateboarder. Oh, you're a rocker. Oh, you're an artist. And all the qualities, good or bad, that go along with it, and that tend to lead us to down ineffective paths for getting to know people better, right? So stereotyping is something that we all do, and we all need to be aware of it. And ideally, we just don't let it affect our gestalts. And and if we don't use gestalts, if we're more the algebraic impression type people, you can kind of evaluate, is that a real impression or is that a stereotyped impression? All right. Okay, well, that's it for this week. Have a great one, and we'll contact each other soon. All right, take care.